Alright, welcome back. I hope these videos are helping you. I actually spent last week refining the code and redoing it for part 4 because I wanted it to have more functionality. Here's a quick demo of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be able to pull up the inventory, randomize to show items. We're going to be able to click to put something on the cursor, place it back down, switch items between slots. We're going to be able to stack things, so I can drag this up and let go of my mouse button, or I can click and then click again. Additionally, you can drag an item off to the side to get rid of it. You can auto sort by the name, so bag, battle axe. You can sort by weapons first, sort by, I don't have any armor in this, so I just sorted by tools, so the tools come first. And this one sorts by items first. And of course, auto sort just sorts by name. You'll notice that when it does the sorting, it's also doing stacking. So if I randomize this again, we can see I have a bunch of different meat here. And when I sort, it'll also stack it. 25 is the maximum for food, and that's why it stacked only to 25. Now, as always, I know time is important, so please use the chapters or the timestamps to jump around. Feel free to watch this at 16 times speed if you like. Additionally, you can use the GitHub if you want to just grab the code, or if you want to read through this script. I wrote out the actual script for what I'm going to say today. You can go there and grab it from GitHub. If you are using my GitHub, you might see things like this if you're using my PNG. And this is because I purchased some sprites to use, and so anything that I use from a purchased library, I am not including. The last item I want to cover here before we jump in is that I may have gone through, updated some typos, or changed and fixed names. For instance, in a few spots I had cat gegori instead of cat egori, an extra G. I fixed that in a few places. All right, part 1 here is going to be quick gum tool fixes. I realized that when making this tutorial, we had to do a few more things in gum. In general, you should do as much as you can in the specific boundary or area you are in. Meaning, if you are doing a lot of code, do all that code. If you're doing all gum, do it in gum. Don't mix part of your UI in gum and part of your UI in code. Try to do any visual or layout things all in gum. I'm going to open up the gum project. I'm going to zoom in with Control+. Let's go down to the inventory panel that we built last time. Inventory doesn't have a hotbar number, so we need to update all of these objects, all of these slots, to not have that. This is where we left off in video 3. So what we're going to do is expand this out, click on the first slot, click on the 36th slot. You should be able to see over in the editor tab up there, it's got a yellow border around which item I have, and so I can see which is the last one. Hold shift and click. I now have all of these selected. I can go down to the variables and states, or states and visibility. I can now change this so that we're going to use is on hotbar state false. And that should now update it so that all these items here are not showing the hotbar number. Next, let's go ahead and edit 37 down so that the hotbar numbers are correct. Again, we want to do most of this editing in the GUI here so that our gum will look like what we expect it to look like. This makes it so that if we're using this in the future, this is what we expect to see in game. We don't have a sudden drastic difference between what we have in the tool here and what we have in Monogame. Next, let's go ahead and add an instance of this to our screen. I'm going to move this up in the list with Alt up arrow. And then it's kind of hard to see because of all these lines. I'm going to change the presentation of this to 720p. Next, change the alignment on this, on the inventory panel, to bottom middle. It should align perfectly to where the other hotbar is. Now go ahead and click on this inventory panel and we're going to hide it so that by default it's not visible. Now there is a bug that's fixed, but I created this project before the fix, and so this is actually being hard-coded to a temporary folder that I use to build the instructions for the video. So I'm just going to update this to the correct location. And now that I've got it correct, I'm just going to hit generate to make sure that this gets generated in that correct spot there. Again, this bug should be fixed, and you shouldn't have to worry about this in future versions. It shouldn't use a hard-coded, it should use relative path. All right, that's it for gumtool. Now we're going to do some coding. Let's make the inventory visible whenever you press the I button. Go to the hotbar screen, find the update method. Instead of calling the handle keyboard input on the instance of hotbar itself, we're going to make the update method call a method inside of hotbar screen so we can add more functionality to display the inventory or the hotbar. All right, so first I'm going to add that method call, and now I'm going to add in that method. And so all this is going to do is get access to the keyboard. It will then call the input, and if we press the I key, it will flip the visibility on the hotbar and flip the visibility on the inventory. The last thing is that we don't want the hotbar keyboard handling to happen while we're in the inventory. So let's go over to that, control click on this, and let's just put a early out up here that if it's not visible, it's going to return. I use a lot of this dot just because of old habits. You can remove this dot anywhere you want. If we go ahead and run this now, we should be able to press the I key to make it appear and disappear. But you'll notice that the inventory doesn't respect anything. Alternatively, you could just change the logic if you wish down here so that the inventory is equal to the opposite of whatever the hotbar instance is if you want to. And that will also function the same. Next, we're going to add in some more control so that we can actually tap into when the inventory becomes visible or not. That way we can populate the inventory when it becomes visible. One of the ways we could do this is we could possibly do a show and hide method, or we could add in a toggle visibility method. We're just going to override the base class's isVisible property instead. This gives us the opportunity to intercept most of the situations or calls that are acted upon, and we can then make changes ourselves. Let's jump over to our inventory panel, and I'm going to go ahead and add in this property. I've got this commented out just for a moment, just so we can make sure things are working. Also notice that when the set operation happens, the base.isVisible is being set. If we just did isVisible or this.isVisible, we would be hitting an infinite loop where it keeps coming back into this property and trying to assign it over and over again. So don't forget to make it base.isVisible. Same for up here. A quick run. Yep, pressing I still changes it, still makes it visible. All right, now let's make sure that we actually update the inventory panel based on the data we have in our inventory, which right now the inventory is just going to be the items on the hotbar. Let's add in another helper here, a slot. We're going to need access to the inventory, so let's pull in that service. When you get things like this, you can usually just do the show potential fixes, and you can use whatever that is. It gives you a suggestion. It's not always correct, but usually it is. And now let's add this method. So I'm going to uncomment it out and put that method in. All this is going to do is loop over all the slots that exist in the inventory, and then it's going to grab that item, pull up the definition, grab the slot based off the index, and then it's going to set the slot equal to the information from the item and the definition. Let's test it out. Pressing I does seem to show the items. What you'll notice is that when I press I, though, there's this weird behavior where we're getting way more border than we're supposed to have. And in addition to that, these items are not the same distance from each other as they are in the hotbar. But if you recall, when we were in the gumtool, they were correct. And that's because of a bug that was fixed in the January 31st release. So to fix this, we're going to have to go and grab the next Nuget package. Going to go up to Tools, down to Nuget Package Manager, and manage Nuget packages for solution. Under the Updates tab, we should see Monogame. Check mark that, click on it. Over here, make sure Hytale Hotbar, or whatever your project name is checkmarked. We're going to install the latest version, which at the time of this video is the January 31st release. This is the runtime code that runs in Monogame, not the gumtool. We're going to run it again to check. All right, there we go. That's what we're expecting to see. We want this to be in the same positions. Vic ended up adding a new feature for me, grid spacing. That wasn't available until the 31st version of the Nuget package. All right, next step, let's make it so we can add random items to the inventory when we're in there so we can kind of play around with them. In the past videos, we had made a setup random hotbar method inside the hotbar screen. Let's update this to use it for our purpose. So the code we're going to add is going to just check to see whether or not the inventory is visible, the panel. If not, it's got to be the hotbar, in which case it will run that code. Now this functionality also changed how we expect the set slot to random item to work. So I'm going to jump down to that method, and I'm going to make a change so that we're no longer modifying the index. Right here, we're trying to modify the index. We don't want to do that anymore. We just want to use the index we're passing in because we're handling that automatically up here. We're doing the addition when we need to do it. Now, if you were to happen to run this right now, go over here and you hit randomize, you should see that there's no item images, and that's because we need to actually do some updates over in the item slot. I'm going to open up item slot. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a method so that we can set the quantity. So we have set durability. Let's add in set quantity. Next, I'm going to add another quick helper method called set states from values, just so we can do both of these at one time. And then over in the set item slot right above here, right after this early out section, let's go ahead and add in some defaults. And this is the reason why it wasn't displaying. We weren't telling it that it had an item. So by default, as long as it has an item, it's not null. Let's set the defaults up. Next, because we simplified things with some of the methods down there, we don't need 3 lines of code here. This can just be 1 line of code now. A call to our new set states from values. Additionally, down here, we don't need all of this as well. We can do the same thing. So now we've cleaned this section up and we've reused some code, which is good. Gonna test it. Okay. Let's try randomize. And hey, we've got items now. If you notice when I click though, we're getting some errors. This is basically just because that object is empty or null. So we can just put a question mark after click here where it was giving us the error message. This is inside the item slot on the custom initialize. Just add a question mark, which is a null check. And now, if we run this again, go back to the inventory, randomize, and click, we're no longer getting that issue. Next, let's add in dragging and dropping items, but we're going to do it the simplistic way where a single click will pick up an item and a single click will drop the item back down or swap positions. The inventory is useless without the ability to use the items and organize it. I'm going to add this simple dragging and dropping now. Later on, we'll do a more complex version. So first I need to add an instance of item slot so we can display the item, the quantity, and the durability on the mouse when we're moving it around. Then I need to detect the mouse position, whether or not we've pressed it, depressed it, dragging, clicking, things like that. Finally, we need to do logic where we're comparing the 2 items in the slots, but we'll do this later on. Let's start off with simply making it so that we can have an item that we've grabbed and we can put that item on our mouse cursor. So add 3 variables, grabbed item, which is an instance of item slot, a variable we can use to keep track of the instance of, or the index of which specific slot we clicked on, and then a variable to know whether or not we have something on the cursor. We need to initialize this grabbed item object. So in the custom initialize here at the end, we can just add in a call to a method we're going to create to initialize it, making sure that this object is added to the gum so that gum knows how to draw it and to update it. And then we're going to make sure that we set the item on cursor to false. As I said before, I like to try to keep update down at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is just above update, I'm going to put this initialize grabbed item code. While we're here, I'm going to create a sibling method as well for clearing that grabbed item. Next, we need a method to be able to update the grabbed item so that it will be whatever slot we clicked on. Let's add in this method here for making sure that we update the position of the icon based on the mouse cursor position. And finally, let's update our update method so that it will call this mouse grabbed icon to move every frame. As long as this is visible, we're going to want to move this around so that it will stay on the cursor wherever the cursor is. You'll notice that we've got an error up here on set slot to slot. So let's go over to the item slot and add this method. I'm going to just put that right here. Now we can test this, but nothing's going to happen. And this is because we have no code to do anything when we click. We've just added code that once we put something on that grabbed item slot, it will then follow the mouse around. But we need to add in mouse click functionality now. All this clicking is going to happen on the hotbar screen. Let's add a bunch of helper methods for ourselves just above update. This will allow us to get information about the inventory based off the slot. Back up in the custom initialize at the top here, let's add in code finally that will handle when we're clicking on one of those slots. Add in that method, and then we're going to add in the next method. Now this handle grabbed item drop that I just added is a temporary method. We're going to add more complex logic later on. Back over in item slot, we need to add in a few more methods. So we've got clear slot, hide slot, and unhide slot that we're going to be using. All right, let's run this. We're not really done yet, but I'm just going to show you that it's working. Randomize the inventory, and if I click on something, it now is on the mouse. I'm not holding a button or anything, but that's all I can do. I can pick up an item, I can drop it back, I can swap it with another item, but that's it. I can't stack two of the same item. There's no drag. I can't click and then drag. I have to click on that slot and then click on the next slot. So it's a little bit mechanical. Additionally, if I tried to drag this off the screen to drop the item to the ground, it doesn't do anything either. I have to click inside of one of these slots. So let's tackle the inventory management piece next. We really need to start putting this logic into the inventory service now, and some of the code we've added up to this point will get extended or modified slightly. Essentially, the inventory service should be the authority on how to manage the inventory, not the hotbar screen. Let's go over to the inventory item definition under our data folder. Let's keep track of two important variables that relate to stacking and merging. One of them is going to be max size, and the other one is going to be is stackable. And is stackable is just going to use information about max size, more than one, to determine whether it's stackable or not. Next, we need to update each of these constructors so that we can pass in a max size. We'll use the default value of 100 because that's what Hytale uses. Finally, we need to actually store that value in our variable. Add the none category here. And we're going to use this later when we're doing the sorting. It will help it so that we don't have to worry about issues with empty or null items. And let's jump over to the hotbar screen. And inside of here, we're going to make a modification so that this isn't going to be a 64 anymore. Instead, we're now going to use the item definition's maximum stack size. So since we're loading the item definition, we're just going to use that max stack size here. This way, things like food that only stack to 25 won't generate randomly with more than 25. we have to update the inventory service itself. And so bear with me because we're going to be adding a lot to this. First, let's go ahead and add in a variable here that will make it easier for us in other spots. We can just use max item slots instead of having to manually type player inventory.length. This next one is an enum that we can use so that we can provide information back about what we did when we tried to merge two items or stack two items together. The next thing is, since we went ahead and updated our inventory item definition to include a maximum stack size, let's update our add item icon so it can pass this on down the way. So now I am getting that value and I'm passing it down to the definition to the constructor. Next, I'm going to update all of those set item position items where we're trying to add the item. Let's go ahead and update this method. And this is just making it so that things like food have a maximum of 25. Weapons and tools, which aren't stackable, only have a maximum of 1. Everything else I left at the default, which in Hytale again is 100. Alright, this next one is going to be a large paste because these 5 methods go together and I really can't split them up. So I'm just going to paste them and we'll do a quick overview. First, we have valid index. This is just a quick helper method to make code more readable. Whenever we need to check to see if an index is valid, we can just call this now. And this first large method is the try move item. This is going to take 2 indexes, the source index and the target index. It's going to attempt to take the first item in the source and stack it with the item in the second one. If it's stackable, if it's not stackable, it will then just move the 2 items. A lot of the code is just checks. See all these no ops? It's just checks to make sure that there's not a bad situation on the index or a bad situation in the data. We do a quick check for a simple case where we're dropping it onto an empty slot so that we can just do some simple code here. And then we're calling another method which is defined down further called combine 2 stacks. This is the code that will actually check to see whether or not the items are the same type, if they have available room in the target stack, and if so, it will try to add the stacks together, and whatever's left over will remain in the source stack. If for some reason we had an unknown condition, what we'll do is we'll just swap the items. Jumping down to the combine 2 stacks method, again, there's just a lot of checks at the beginning here to make sure that we're not working on items that can cause issues in our code. This is a little redundant, but it's in here just in case. Then I'm loading the definitions for the source and the target, because at this point in time, they should both have an item in them. I'm not doing any guarding here. This is a dictionary lookup, so this could throw an error. You can do guarding if you wish. Again, this is just a demo, so I'm trying to get the most basic example possible. Here is our logic for the stacking. First thing, it has to be the same item. Next thing is that it has to be stackable. So if it's just a tool or a weapon, it's not stackable. We're not going to run any of this logic on it. We're instead going to return unknown condition, in which case the standard swap will happen. Since an item is stackable, then it will come in here and it will check to make sure that the quantity at the target is not larger than the maximum stack size. So if you already have 100 of items of, let's say, arrows, and you're trying to drag 50 arrows on top of that, there's no reason for it to do that. It's already full. The target is already full. There's no operation to happen, basically. I'm using a different enum here, though, because maybe you want to play some sort of an animation or play a different sound or do something different in your UI or in your game when someone tries to drop items onto a full stack. Here's where we combine stacks. So as long as the quantity of both of these is greater than the max stack size, so 50 plus 63, then we're going to come in here and we're going to figure out what the maximum takeable is, essentially how much room is left on that stack, and then we're going to add that to the target, remove it from the source. Otherwise, if the combination of these two would not be bigger than it, we just set this equal to that plus the other one, clear out the source item, and return back. Sort inventory by, and it looks like there's a few more spots I forgot to update, so I'm actually going to go over to the item definition. And here's that lovely little item category that I thought I updated, but I must have forgot to do it for this copy of the code base. And then next, I need to actually make sure that we can use the array. Import or use system. What does the sort inventory by do? I'm being simple here. I'm just using a if else in this case, and I'm using strings. You could use enums, you could use method calls, you could use a switch statement, whatever you want to do. You could get fancy. I'm just doing very simple, very basic for this example. This method will take in how we want to sort the inventory. The default behavior is to sort by name. If we sort by armor, it's really sorting by the tool. If it's sorting by weapon, it's really sorting by the weapon. If it's sorting by items, then it's sorting by when it's not a tool or a weapon. This is all just using link to sort it. You're welcome to sort it however you wish. Once it's sorted, I then copy that sorted information back into the player inventory and overwrite the data. The last bit is that after doing all that, we compact and combine the inventory. To do that, I wrote a little bit of code here that what it does is it essentially loops over the inventory one time, and it has two different pointers or cursors or indexes that are looping, and it's looking to see if two pairs of items that are next to each other can be combined together in a stack. You can look at the code to try to understand it. I tried to add some comments, and I'm using the combine two stacks method as well. Let's add in some code to the inventory panel, and this is actually going to go into the custom initialize. And that's it. We should now have sorting in Hytale. Let's see if I run into any of the other category errors. Yep, I must have a few more. Got one here and one here. All right, randomize, and then let's see if it sorts. All right, it sorted. We started to get stacks. That's great. Now I have 15 of this carrot right here and 15 here, and it's a food. So if I add them together, it should be 25. But we haven't made the code for the clicking and the dragging yet very, very advanced. So if I try to drag this on top of here and click, it's just going to move the two stacks. So this one's got no rarity, this one's got a rarity. It just moves the two items. It does not try to combine them. This is also a good time to point out that really stackable things shouldn't have different rarities, but we're just randomizing all of that for this demo. It looks a little bit weird in the demo, but in your game, you obviously wouldn't have 16 different rarity levels for carrots. And even if you did have different rarity levels for an item stack, you would just need to modify the stacking code to then pay attention to not just the name of the item, but the rarity also. Even though we can't click to combine these, we should still be able to click auto sort again, and these will end up being combined. Same thing if I tried to bring up some of these. Now we've got all this extra wood, and if I sort, these boards should then sort and then combine and compact, and the stack should combine. And they did. Additionally, I can sort by all of these other things. So I can actually sort by, if I click on the weapons, all the weapons will sort first, and then everything else just sorts by all the types first. So weapons, then the items, then the tools. And within each category, it's then sorted by name. When I click on this armor icon, I don't have any armor, but it's going to sort by tools. So tools show up first, then items, then the weapons. And if I click on the items show up first, then tools, then weapons. T comes before W. And if I just click auto sort, it will just be every item in the alphabetical order of the item name. Now, when you click on these, there's no indication I've clicked on it. There's no visual change to the auto sort button. And that's because we didn't add any functionality in Gum to do that. And this video series is not about that. There's other video series talking about it. You can also look up how the existing button, the Forms button, works. All right, we got a little bit more, but we're mostly done, as you can tell. Currently, we can swap two items by clicking once on the first item and then click on the second item. It doesn't allow us to do the stacking. We also can't drag, so I can't just left click and hold the mouse button down and drag and let go. I have to do an explicit full click on the first item and a full click on the second item. And that's slow, and it's also kind of mechanical, it's rigid. And as I already said, you also can't drop outside the inventory. Let's fix all that now. We're going to do a little bit of rewriting of one or two methods, but most of this is going to be new code. This is sort of a shotgun attempt to add in any missing functionality that I haven't covered yet. Over on the hotbar screen, we're going to add two methods. I'm going to put them right next to these other inventory-related methods. So we're going to add in clear inventory slot and refresh slot. Update our grabbed item drop. Right here we have this temporary code. We're going to now update this. This code is now going to be using a little bit more logic, some checks to make sure things don't go wrong. All right, let's test this out now. So everything is still rigid and archaic, but we should be able to left click and drop. Yep, so now stacking does appear to be working, it seems. Let's try a few more. Bring this up here. Yep. Drop this on here. Move this, move this. Yep, it appears that that's working. But again, we can't drop this outside to drop it on the ground. And I can't click and then drag. I have to click within the box, the slot, and drop it on the other slot. So we're almost there, almost done. Let's add in dragging now. We'll need to add in some event handlers for push, remove push, and dragging. Then we'll update the click event just slightly. Over in item slot at the very top, you're going to add in those three other events. So we had click already. Now we're going to have these other three. And then down under the custom initialize, we're going to add these convenience quick access helpers for us. So we don't have to dive into the visual to get access to the event. We can just do it directly off of this item slot. Back over in the hotbar screen here, we need to add a few booleans to track if we are dragging, if we just recently had pushed down on the button or not. Put them right next to your isItemOnCursor. And now that we've got them, we need to set them into their defaults and the initialize. So I'll put it right here next to the other boolean for our states. Let's add in some calls. So we are already doing the click, but we need to now handle push, removed as pushed, and dragging. I'm just going to go down to this other section for the click, and then right above it or below it, doesn't matter. One of these spots, I'm going to put in the next three methods. So we've got handle item pushed, the handle inventory item removed as pushed, and then the handle inventory item dragging. Last thing we need to do is, like I said, the click event needs to change a little bit. Essentially, we're going to be allowing the push state to control some of the functionality of when the item ends up on the cursor. So we just need to control some of that state logic here. And that small bit of a change is all we need to do. All right, and that should be it. So I'm testing it now. I should be able to drag from here to here. I'm actually holding the mouse button down right now, and I know you can't see that. Yep, and it stacked it. I should be able to drag this, and I should be able to drag and drop things off to get rid of them. So now I can actually drop items out of my inventory, and then you would just handle that code so that when it returns back as a dropped in the hotbar screen, you would change your code to then spawn a real item in your game. Now there is one last piece that's kind of broken that we haven't touched or talked about yet. So if I move up most of these things and we put down maybe a few other random things down here, if I press I again, you'll notice that the hotbar inventory is wrong. And that's because we never refreshed this. So we need to actually refresh the hotbar like we do with the inventory whenever it becomes visible. For that, you're going to go over to your hotbar, add in the inventory service, because we need to know what data is there so we can actually update our hotbar. Add in loading of the service. As we did with the other inventory panel, we're going to add in property here that's going to override the functionality of isVisible. This way we can run code whenever it becomes visible. The last thing we need to do for this entire video is to create this method to update the hotbar from inventory. I'm going to put that down here under custom initialize. And if we run this now, I have some items here, and I move them out, and then I press I. They should still be there. And when I press I again, those should be present. I should also be able to randomize this down here. And when I press I, this should be updated. Everything does seem to be working. I can sort, I can add items, I can sort by different things, I can drop them outside, I can click and drag, I can click, let it on the mouse cursor, and drop. All right, that is the end of our 4-part mini-series on Hytale, how to create a hotbar, how to create an inventory system, and how to get them working with each other, do sorting and stacking. Please let me know if you have any questions. Join Vic and I on the Discord, and have fun. Bye.